With over 400 celebrity interviews and tons of pop culture nerdiness, Too Opinionated is a safe haven for your inner geek. Find us at Meisterkhan.com or on YouTube under Meisterkhan Pod. And please subscribe. It would really help us out. Thanks, everybody. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Too Opinionated. Super excited today. I've got actress, writer, comedian Sierra Katow with me. So welcome, Sierra.
Hey, great. Thank you for getting that pronunciation on the last name right. I know that.
Did I get it right?
It's a weird one. Yeah, Katow. The trick is everybody says Katow because it is spelled Katow. It's spelled Katow.
That was my first
and that's
instinct.
kind of intro. Yeah. That's like a holdover from I don't know when, but it is a Japanese last name that's Katow. And yeah, so thanks.
It's not easy for my West Virginia accent to pronounce anything. So if I was close, I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, no, nailed it.
Well, I'm so excited to have you on the show. I've been watching for a couple years now, Sex Lives of College Girls, which is hilarious. You're our favorite character on there. We always love it when you show up on the episode. So that's pretty good. It took a while for season 2 to come out.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I made you guys wait a bit. I think both kind of were out around the holidays. So I feel like they try to time it. So it's like when everybody kind of has time off and wants to really dig in and like watch a juicy show, 10 episodes. Yeah, I think it's all part of the plan.
It kind of felt like college. Like you watch the first season and then you go home for the summer. And then when you come back, everybody looks just a little bit different. That's what season 2 felt like. I was like, oh, it's like going back to sophomore year of college.
I mean, yeah, no, that's right. I know some people got some haircuts or grew their hair a little bit more or like, fixed some makeup things that like I know even for me, I was always worried about my hair getting too long and like at what length. I mean, ultimately it didn't matter because I feel like my character's wearing a lot of ponytails and, I'm not, it's not like you can scrutinize my character too long, but I know people are like Kimberly's hair, one of the leads played by Pauline Chalamet got like 2 inches longer. And like this, it was like everybody was like keeping tabs on everybody's.
Isn't that funny how fans do that? They're very astute. Any little change.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I don't know about that. That
right.
hair didn't have time to grow.
Right. Initially, people are always, crunching the numbers and making sure it's scientifically possible. But I hope everybody warmed up to all the decisions made by the end.
It's been pretty good. I've enjoyed the progression. You've learned a little bit about each individual character, and that's, I think, deepened the show a little bit. I mean, the comedy was always really good. It's funny. But now now it's season 2, you're invested in the characters. You want good things to happen.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. I love because I really primarily watch it as a fan. It's like I know certain plot points of my character Evangeline and Bella's character because that's what part of the world I am. But, especially the episodes I'm not in, I don't really see those scripts beforehand. And so when I'm watching it, I'm watching with everyone else. And I also am just as invested. And it's so fun to like see what they did, with the growth from season 1 to season 2, or just like expand the world out a little bit more and like see them try new things, especially because it's such that nostalgia of college. And I like love the world. It's, they get to try new things and make mistakes and be totally like ridiculous and horrible, but they're young. And like, that's kind of part of being a young woman, like figuring out who you are. And yes, all the jokes are hilarious. The writers are ridiculously funny.
They're really good. It's fun seeing it from, because you used to seeing that type of show from like a male perspective. It's been fun flipping that and seeing it from the female perspective. And you've got this group of characters that you've really kind of got invested in. It's been a good ride so far.
Yeah, no, I love that flip. I think like I remember seeing Mindy Kaling quoted about like how that was kind of how they pitched it. It's like, we've seen I don't even whatever classic movies, I can't even name the titles, but I was just watching even Neighbors, which is such a funny comedy movie that came out, right? And Zac Efron and Seth Rogen, and like that's a very like frat house, like male perspective on college. And then it's just fun to like see what it is from the girl's perspective, but also just like similarities, differences, but also the updated version of like today's college kids rather than 10 years ago or whatever. So yeah, I like that they made that intentional to try to see like, hey, what if a girl could like hook up with a bunch of guys and or a girl or girls too, and like see what that's like rather than the other way around.
Yeah, I mean it's been kind of and it's done well. You don't feel like it's anything's being forced. It's just that's just college. It's been it's been kind of a nice way to, and I like the fact that they screw up a lot. It's not been easy.
They're flawed.
Nothing they do is easy, which is kind of nice because that's what college is like. It's just one mistake after another, and some way you kind of grow into adulthood.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, you need that time. And that's what's like great about college. If you're, lucky enough to experience a American college experience, let's say, it is all about messing up, and yet you're kind of insulated from the real world. So you don't necessarily like, it doesn't totally destroy you and your reputation or whatever. And then on top of that, I think like, I think back to my college days and mistakes I made and like just a fool myself what I did. And I have some friends from college still that, that I just like hung out with this past weekend, say, and like, I feel like we're all closer because we saw each other at our worst and we like are still friends even through that. You know what I mean? Like, I think those bonds that you form when you're like kind of a shithead person, like as long as you're not, causing major harm, right? You can kind of come out with some really strong relationships. And I think that's what is going to happen.
Yeah. That's one of the best things about college, I think, is just the relationships that you form while you're there, because those people see you at your best and your worst.
Definitely.
Yeah. You went to a little small college I hadn't heard of, Harvard. So it's a little tiny one.
Yeah.
Did you see some similarities in the show and some of the things you went through in college?
Definitely. Yeah. I think, and I'm not alone in this. I think I've talked to a lot of friends from different colleges that can always see some part of their experience there. But for me specifically, I think, definitely it being like Essex College in the show is like supposed to be in New England, in I think Vermont. But they've got snow and especially in season 2, I think the first episode where they're like in their like little like party clothes, bikinis, whatever, like underwear, going through the snow with those coats. Like that was definitely a huge part of my experience. Like anytime like going to a party, you're wearing like a tiny dress, but you're gotta wear your like huge like giant wool or down jacket over it. And it's just the most ridiculous thing. But anyway, so that definitely, I think for my for Bella's storyline, actually, I probably relate to the most, and the fact that she was interested in comedy going into college, and I was as well. And so at Harvard, there was the Harvard Lampoon. It was a humor magazine that has a lot of like people who graduate from it and then go on to write for comedy televisions, Saturday Night Live, Tonight Show, things like that. So I was really adamant about joining that. And in the show, right, season 1, they had the Cotillon, so it was kind of similar. And yeah, so I think I drew from my experience in college, like being in that organization, being surrounded by a lot of like guys who were really interested in comedy and felt it should be done a certain way. And like, I think Bella's experience, luckily, I mean, I didn't have her exact experience with like the sexual harassment and then sexual assault and things like that. But I think, definitely understanding like entering into kind of these college organizations that feel very self-important, even though it's a bunch of kids being kind of bullies or whatever. I really like loved that representation of like her trying to break down barriers and running into issues and getting allies and friends along the way. I think that was really so relatable. And then I think just on top of that, the friendships and the bonds of like everybody at the school trying to like find where they're at, that typical college experience thing that we were just talking about, making mistakes, coming of age. I think that's all just probably the most relatable part, aside from the small details that are similar to like Harvard specifically. But yeah.
I've been accused of telling the same stories over and over anytime I'm with anybody that I kind of grew up with or went to college. And most of those stories come from college. I mean, that's the time.
Sure. Yeah. Lots of stories, like, because you can kind of, it's way more fun to talk about them later rather than relive it specifically. Right. But it is, I think that's the time where we have the most stories. I mean, just things that I was like willing to do. I mean, now it's like, oh, I'm rarely gonna like go out too late, or like, go with strangers to do some like thing just because I want to try to make new friends and fit in. I'm like, I've got my friends now, the decisions I'm making are much safer, of course.
So I mean, in college, we didn't even start until 11 o'clock. And now I've been in bed an hour by 11 o'clock.
Right. Yeah. No, 11 still like, early afternoon.
Yeah. So when you were growing up, when did you decide, okay, I want to try acting, or I want to get into comedy? When did that come about?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I had a specific moment, but a big jump for me was when I started to do stand-up. And stand-up comedy to me was sort of a thing that I would do as a hobby. Like, I wasn't thinking of fully going into it professionally. But I did my first open mic when I was 16, and I grew up in a suburb of LA, so I could go into LA where there were comedy clubs. And I remember I wasn't able to go fully into a lot of them because they might have been 21 plus, but some did allow you to perform and then leave right after. And I think, I liked the idea that, I was a pretty great student in high school, and like I played basketball, nice. And I did things that, which basketball doesn't really make sense for me. I'm still like 5'1". I was even smaller.
You seem taller on camera.
Struggling. Oh yes. Thank you.
That's coming from someone that, I'm not the tallest either. So
okay. Thank you. No,
anytime that I look taller than I am, I'm like, okay, I'll take it.
Yeah. Isn't it huge? It's just the best words you can hear, I think. So I appreciate that. They do put me in a lot of heels.
I'm guessing you probably played more of a guard position for the basketball team.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Wasn't getting many rebounds, so they stuck me out on the perimeter. Now I was like a point guard often, love to dribble. Yeah, I did my best, but I think limits were physically there. So I think actually after I quit basketball, I was like, what I'd like to do is stand-up comedy. I think I was a fan of it. I had just like, I had started watching, I knew there wasn't a height, discrimination as much in stand-up as basketball. So I hear. And so, I remember had just gotten like cable, I think. So we, as a family, had just gotten cable. And so then I had just started watching like Comedy Central. And so the idea of like stand-up comedy was like, oh, wow, I didn't realize this was like more than just like Ellen DeGeneres or just like the Jay Leno did it. Like it was a ton of people. You could do it. And so that kind of sparked, something. And then I continued to perform. And when I went to college, college is great to explore things, right? So Boston had a great comedy scene. I would do open mics there. And the rest of it, I guess, writing and acting kind of comes with it because you're already kind of doing that in stand-up to some degree. And I was just, I think I was lucky. I think it's really hard. It's a hard profession, to kind of find your way in, because obviously like there's not a clear path. I didn't really know many people in it, but I was lucky my family was very supportive and didn't like discourage me outright, which I think is like, a lot of people have understandably parents who want them to like pursue
because it's very concerning things. If your kid comes and say, I want to be a stand-up comedian, you're like, what's your backup?
Right. Yeah. Which, of course I made sure to have, I guess, and they made sure I had. But yeah, I guess at least it wasn't like outright like, you're dumb, please sit down. Which I appreciate.
The first time you did stand up, first time you were on stage, how did it go? Did you get laughs, or was it crickets?
I did. And I think, so I did. It was like a 3-minute open mic and I did get laughs. I think the thing is that tends to be the case. Like, I mean, I don't know. I've heard a few people talk about the first times. Sometimes your first time, I feel like you do well, because maybe that you've been saving up like your best jokes and you're ready to finally go. It's kind of like thereafter where you're like, oh shit, I got to write more stuff. You know what I mean? That's when it kind of is like the test of, are you actually willing to bomb a lot and still come back, right? Versus, sure, I think if you are funny, we can all kill once and have a great time. But like, the slog of it, I think, was the test for me. But yeah, the first time, I mean, if the first time went horribly, then maybe, yeah, we wouldn't be here.
Right.
I wouldn't be sitting here
that was
talking
kind of
about comedy. I would
if
be
if
like,
it went really bad, I'm
actually
like, pretty persistent.
Sure. But yeah, I think I tend to hear that the first time goes well for a lot of people, which is to say, I think, people who want to do it should at least do it once.
What was do you remember what your first joke that you told was? I mean, because you have to have a good one to open with.
You're right. I think I really did one on farting, of course. Everybody has to do a fart joke.
Especially like
it's the rite of passage.
Mid-teens, that's kind of your, you don't have a lot of life experience, right? You gotta go with what you know.
Farting. I know, go exactly, and boy did I know. But yeah, so I did that one. It was like a story kind of, and it was good. I still like it. I mean, I wouldn't tell it because it's, again, a fart joke that I'm like, I don't know if there's a lot of like substance to this, right? but
sometimes that's maybe okay. I'll bring back out sometime. Like if you find yourself back at a high school, that joke would probably still kill.
Sure. That's a good point. That's
That's
right. Well, I got to get my high school gigs in order so I can bring it back.
I always remember the Seinfeld episode where like Jerry goes to a high school to talk about being a comedian. And, he's very worried about, what he's using to break the ice with the high school kids. I don't know, because I think that could be a tough crowd.
It is. Yeah. Well, you know what we do as comedians? A lot of college shows, because that's kind of, there's a lot of colleges who have those events budgets, right? And so that I'm always a little like, oh, this has got to be a little bit different, because everybody's, of course, quite young, but also, just and I think, when I was closer to college age, it was a little easier. And so now I'm like a few more years out, and I just feel like, okay, make sure, you're kind of up to speed on like the lingo, you don't want to get canceled. But no, also just like, making sure you don't sound too out of touch, but also like have something that they would actually want to hear and like get.
Have you been heckled? How are you at handling the hecklers?
I have. I don't, it doesn't happen a ton, but I would say the main time is like when people are drunk and like just would heckle anybody. I don't think I solicit like, attack me. But I do think, sometimes it happens. Sometimes I'm okay with it. I think luckily when that happens, like audience is already on your side, because everybody doesn't want the random drunk dude taking the show away. So I think like a few things and shutting it down, mostly like if it's not too bad, I can ignore it. And then everybody kind of can still tune in.
Yeah, that's kind of true. The audience, most times, they kind of defend you. They'll step in and give whoever it is a hard time, and it usually shuts them up. Not always.
Yeah. Like as long as you as a comic are not being sure. Yeah, I think because and I've seen some comics, sometimes there's like the types who antagonize the audience a little bit more. And it's not even that they're like an asshole. It's just that sometimes the way their comedy is. And it's funny, but I'm not that kind of comic. So I think I already am not like provoking that much. So I think as a result, most of the audience is like that, whoever's heckling, it's like, why, nobody's talking to you, versus I guess there are comics who do more crowd work, or maybe they do, pick on some audience members. And then in those cases, I can see it being like a little more.
Well, that seems like that's more fair game. If you're dishing it out,
sure. Yeah.
Better be prepared to take it back.
Right. And it happens. People respond,
Yeah. Yeah. So you did the last comic standing while you were still in school. How did that come about?
Sure. That was really cool. I was a third year in college. So
it's pretty young.
I think what happened. Yeah. No, it was kind of like I had been doing stand-up, but I didn't have a ton of material. I had a video go viral, you know, kind of back before, obviously before TikTok, but on the like Laugh Factory channel on YouTube. And so I think from that, they were like, hey, I want to do, you know, 3 minutes or something. So I submitted my 3 minutes, or actually I did audition, you know, they did like a showcase at the Improv in Hollywood. And then from there got to do it. And so it was like, you know, I had to fly out, I remember, from school. So that was kind of fun. And the fact that they also like, they came to Harvard to like film a little background package on me because it was like interesting that I was still a student, you know, all those fun things. So it was a fun experience. I think I lucked out because I remember going, and, you know, these are working comics that I was like, quote unquote, competing against in this last comic standing competition. And so a lot of them were older than me. A lot of them, it was just like higher stakes for them because this was their career. And I was still in school. So ultimately I had like a fine time, you know, I didn't proceed past the first level. But I was like pretty okay with that because I was just happy to be there. You know what I mean? Versus I understand that there are a lot of people of different levels coming in and being like, I actually need to like win this because it could make a huge deal. Yeah. So I had the like benefit of it being like, I'm just happy to be here. I don't deserve to be here. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I'm too young to be here, but I'm very happy that they decided it would be interesting to put a student in here. And yeah, it was great. I got to, you know, I think it's interesting. Oh yeah. The judges were Norm Macdonald, Roseanne Barr, and Keenan Ivory Wayans.
Oh,
so, you know, different outcomes for
no big deal.
all three of them, but but that was cool too. So, I mean, you know, just being around them and I made a lot of friends with the comics and still know a lot of them today. So that is cool.
That is pretty cool. So what point did that transition into acting?
Yeah. I mean, you know, gradually, slowly, and not in any reasonable way. I think I did not consider myself to be somebody who was going to act. I think there's just not a lot of like, it was sort of like, well, I know there are parts out there for Asian American women now. You know, I'm luckily benefiting from the many years where people like paved that path, but I knew it wasn't still a ton. And the ones that I would get, sometimes it'd be like, oh, you know, need to speak Mandarin, which I can't really do. You know, many things that I'm like, well, I don't quite fit that character, except the fact that I am an Asian woman. So certainly I was like, I'm a stand-up comedian, I'll do comedy. So I think because of that, though, I did get some auditions because people would see my stand-up and be like, hey, you must be able to do this comedic role. And so I was able to kind of get repped through an audition I did that I made it to a certain point, and then the casting director referred me to my agent, who I'm still with today. And from then on was just kind of auditioning at the same time as doing stand-up and writing. So I think for me, it was like, I'm certainly you know, obviously I'm not a graduate of a theater program. I didn't do a lot of theater, but I think coming from stand-up, you know, I lucked out in the sense that like, I do love comedy. I have been able to like carve out my voice in just stand up. And sometimes that translates. And I think in the case of like Sex Lives with College Girls, my character was so similar to like my real life experience. And that is a way that some actors find their way into roles, I guess, is that, hey, I can just do this because it's, you know, so I think that worked out in that regard. But overall, I think everything is kind of, it depends on you know, what you're trying to learn and what kind of projects you want to be a part of. And I'm kind of like gradually getting more interested in like what other types of genre.
All right, so we're back. We lost connection for a minute, but you were nice enough to hang in there. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, I briefly considered paying for the better internet, but I was like, you know what? Dial-up still works.
So, I mean, yeah, if that's what you're on and it's still working
for you, it's so much cheaper. You know, you just gotta wait for the connection, but I don't know.
Sure, but that's fun.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about the writing side of it, because I know you write especially a lot for the animated shows, which a lot of those shows, you know, my grandkids are starting to watch. So it's pretty neat. But how how did you transition into writing, as if you had all this extra time that you needed to fill up?
No, yeah. I mean, yeah, writing, I've always wanted to do it. I think it's like, I don't know why. But I think as a stand-up, you're always writing your own jokes. And I've always probably been more on the writing side of, I think there are some great stand-ups who are like hilarious performers and they just have like personality, can crush in any like impromptu way. I'm probably not one of those people. I'm a little bit more, as I said, I was maybe a little more like studious as a student. So I think that translated more to the writing side of stand-up and comedy. So for me, writing like felt like something I could do. I was probably a little too what's that, delusions of grandeur, thinking it would be a thing I could do when I had never done it before. I think that's the weird thing about like entertainment too. It's like we all want to do it, but like to even get a first job, what if you get it and you hate it? So luckily I didn't, but I don't think. No, so I think so I was lucky in many ways, but I think for sure from doing stand-up, I got one of my first writing gigs doing a writing for Earth to Ned, which was a show on Disney Plus. It's still on, but we probably won't be making more episodes. But it is one season is out, 20 episodes. It's a late night talk show format, but it's hosted by an original space alien. I say original in that it's an original Jim Henson character from the Henson Company, who of course did the Muppets, and just
it's
is
a fun show,
a magical place in and of itself. Yes. Oh yeah. I mean, people loved it. I think it was like, it is one of a kind. It was kind of coming out right when Disney Plus was coming out. So when we were writing it, Disney Plus didn't exist yet. And we were kind of like, I wonder what it's going to be like. Is it going to be like Netflix? What sort of area is it going to be? Now we kind of know Disney Plus is like, they're great at doing Marvel things, Disney things, kind of maybe mostly within the IP and some originals, but this was like purely very original, other than like the connection of Henson, that world. But yeah, so that was awesome. And I think the transition from doing stand-up to writing for variety shows like that is a little easier, because you're just like writing jokes and you're like, how to write a joke and maybe what, might sound funny coming out of this person's mouth and stuff, as like in the real world, breaking the fourth wall. But then thereafter, when I was writing for animation, I think that was a little more of a learning curve of learning story and being like, oh, okay, now, sometimes we got to figure out just a story structure. I mean, I think one of my best learning, because I didn't go to film school and necessarily learn, I guess, take a screenplay class or something, but I was writing for a Disney Junior show that is called Eureka, and it is out as well. And that, though very simple, because it is for like 3 to 7-year-olds.
Yeah, Eureka is the one the grandkids are way into.
Oh, great! Yes. Oh, amazing.
And
glad
that's
they
their
watch.
age. They're about 3 years old, and that's kind of their
3. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it keeps their attention, which is not always easy.
Oh yeah, no, I may think, they're short episodes, so I think it's just the right amount, but that's great that they like it. I think that's awesome. I think, there's a lot of effort put into, just because we would write these shorter stories, like I just learned that structure very, very well. And that was kind of my boot camp in understanding that sort of side of writing that isn't jokes, right? But yeah, what's fun about that show is I think we had a science consultant and everything, so that your grandkids, hopefully they'll glean some sort of also engineering understanding from it, and grow up to be inventors themselves if they want, because the main character is Eureka, an inventor in kind of like the prehistoric ages magical world, where she's inventing wheels, but also she invented the wheel, and then she kind of graduated to making crazy cool inventions and has a family and friends, and it's great. But yeah, and then since then I think I've written for more like adult animated series, and the one Close Enough, which was on HBO Max. Unfortunately, I think they took down a lot of things, so I don't know if it's on there anymore, but loved that. And then there's a new show that will come out called Exploding Kittens, that's based on the game, for Netflix.
Are kittens actually exploding?
So yeah, it's like the game is called Exploding Kittens, and it's a really popular card game. And the creator of, I guess, I don't know if anybody, I grew up reading his webcomics, but The Oatmeal, which is a famous webcomic. And then the artist who created that webcomic, he also created the artwork for Exploding Kittens and, also the game itself. And so he is the creator of this show. And the show has cats in it, but it's not necessarily like a direct, like taking like the game and making it into a story. I don't really know exactly, but I know it is. I mean, and I'm not allowed to give any spoilers, but of course, I think, versus, I don't know if anybody watched Battleship. I didn't, but you know how like people, Hasbro will like take their games and be like, how can we make this movie? Bring Rihanna in, that I don't think is what they were going for with this one, but, but I respect that. I think I watched I don't know what other game. I mean, the Lego, that's another fun version of like.
Well, so where can we watch this one at? Where's it?
It will be on Netflix, but I don't think it's coming out until like end of 2023. So it'll be a while. Animation, as we know, if you write for animation, writing tends to happen first, and then they'll animate it all and get the voices in and direct it. And so kind of, if
it's
anytime
not a
I
quick
write for an animated
process.
show, it takes a while. Yeah, it takes a while for me to see the end, but for all the people working on it, I mean, for them, they're probably like, can we get a little bit more time? They're like working around the clock.
They're probably feeling very rushed.
This is a lot of work. Yeah, exactly. So thank you for knowing that animation work. I mean, it's a fun place to be because you get to really, as a writer, focus on the writing and the jokes and the world and kind of the imagination can go wild because you're not kind of restricted to normal physics, which is fun.
Yeah. I saw you were doing something called distancing socially.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That was like a movie during
but it's like it's got little stories in it, right? Different characters.
It was like vignettes. Yeah. It was cool. Like kind of around the time when, we were figuring out how to do filming and TV and movies in the pandemic, I auditioned for this thing. Yeah. In the like 2020 love it all, where we were really completely isolated. I auditioned for this independent movie that eventually ended up in where did it end up? I don't know. It ended up somewhere, but anyway, it directed by Chris Blake. I was just impressed because he was able to write this entire script, film it all kind of remotely, like he was on Zoom, like you are to me, giving me direction. And the DP came by and stayed distant outside and everything, but was able to kind of help with any technical things, if anything, and hold the camera because there was one part where I was walking outside. So it was all very like impressive from, I was a very small, like I saw a very small part of it, my character, but it was cool to see them like work with what they had and under strict conditions and very much before even, things were going back in and starting to do COVID testing to allow you to film in person. Like it was before that. So
I know we had that short period of time where it was kind of weird, but you were seeing a lot of the Zoom type of shows or even talk shows were doing things by Zoom.
Yeah.
A strange period of time. I saw the reason that one kind of caught my eye is we're friends with Jim O'Hare, and I saw he had a little.
Oh, cool. Yeah. He's in. Yeah, I know, and he's worked with that director a couple times. So that was cool to see that. Yeah, but again, it was like so funny because this cast too, obviously so many talented people. I was like, we were all remote, and many times when you work on a project, you don't necessarily meet the people, right? But especially this one, it was like, oh yeah, I guess I was even, acting opposite somebody, but because, just the way scheduling works and because the director also has to be on Zoom and everything, like I was really acting with the director. And so then the opposite actor was layered in later. So it was a very, and they did a great job editing it. Like it looked like we were talking to each other. So
I know that's pretty neat. It's pretty neat. So
creative, resourceful.
I wanted to mention too that you've done some podcasting, and I watched some of those episodes. They're really funny.
Yes. Oh,
those are fun episodes.
Yeah,
I like the fact that you're just you're just talking about how the heck people are getting through things, which is, I think, hilarious.
Oh yeah, no, thank you it means a lot because obviously you're the pro here. I think what's so fun about this format, and obviously is like I had started it I think I had started it maybe in like 2018, I can't remember, where I would have people come to my apartment and we would just sit across the table and talk. And so that was very intimate and fun. But then when COVID, like March 2020 hit, it was really like, oh, okay, this actually opens up, in many ways. It was a good thing for podcasting in the sense that it opened up all podcasts to like be like, Yeah, you could podcast from anywhere. You could be in West Virginia, which is awesome. You could be, wherever back home. And then you could also interview anybody anywhere, instead of having to restrict it to people in your town. So I think that really was fun to be able to like just, get rid of the sort of rules that I had made up for it, which was like, I got to have them in person. I have to be comfortable with them in my apartment. You know what I mean? Then it was like, I could actually cold call somebody who I wouldn't normally want seeing my, weird shoes by the door. They can be just coming in from their email. And I think I really, I liked, it was a savior in the sense of like being able to have somebody to talk to for like a little bit,
Yeah.
and share
COVID,
those things.
this is kind of bad to say, but COVID was really good for us as a podcast because everybody was stuck at home and had nothing to do. So when we reached out to get guests, we didn't have a lot of trouble bringing people on. They could just do it in their living room. I think that's
whatever. They could do it, and they could get a break from whoever they've been living with for 24 hours a day. You know what I mean? And talk to someone new. That is a great thing. And I think it did help a lot of listeners, right? Like, I'm sure that like you have so many people who are just like so thankful that they had you in their ear for
they
those
needed
times
something to
keep
do.
somebody.
I don't know if they're thankful to have me in their ear, but
I'm sure
podcasts in general.
Sure. No. All of the above.
I say this a lot. The best thing about podcasting is anybody can do it. And the worst thing about podcasting is anybody can do it.
I've heard it put that way. That's so true, right? No, I love both of those aspects. I love that it's good and bad, but the same thing. Because I do think that like I love like the do-it-yourself element of all the technology that's kind of come to the front. Like I think for me, like because I used to be such a computer nerd, and when I was I studied computer science, but when I was growing up, I like taught myself how to code, and I loved like making little YouTube videos teaching other people how to code, and I would like be really interested in like being on the internet. But because I was a kid and like a little bit like the internet was kind of like a dangerous place, you know what I mean? And I didn't have a didn't have a smartphone, so I think for sure there was a lot of like barriers that then now I'm like, it's the same thing where it's like, yeah, sure, you can do so much. You can build a business even if you're like 13 years old, but you also you can be on the internet.
Yeah, you gotta be a little careful.
A little bad. Yeah. But But I think I think the more the better, in the sense of I think we still only a narrow amount rise to the top, and those top 10 podcasts on iTunes, it's still kind of maybe similar things, but hopefully like the more the better, as far as like the wealth could be spread out a little bit listeners wise.
I know it's so weird. Like the last 10 years or so, you've got TikTok stars and YouTube stars and podcasters and all these people that would have had a lot more difficult time being noticed in the past, but now they have these avenues where they can kind of get out there. And there's some bad elements to that, but you also get exposed to a lot of people maybe you'd never heard of if it wasn't for those type of social media.
Yeah, I love that. I think ultimately too, I think a lot about, especially in like Asian American community and entertainment, we talk a lot about representation. So we're always saying like, oh, when I was growing up, I didn't really see somebody who looked like me in an action movie or whatever. So that's true. But now I feel like what's even better is you're getting not just like actors portraying something that you would want to be. Like, for instance, say you really wanted to be a lawyer and you get to see somebody portray a lawyer on TV and they look like you, then that could be really inspiring. Maybe I would want to be a lawyer. But I would say that like TikTok, what's even better is like you can get the actual lawyer, like actual people. And I'm using lawyer, it could be any profession, but like you get actual people doing their job and talking about it on TikTok, because everybody can kind of do that.
That's right.
And maybe that's even more valuable than seeing like the portrayal of somebody you want to be, is like seeing the actual person.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it is.
Because, of course we're not. Yeah.
Because, if you're growing up and you're interested in a profession, now it's very easy to find somebody that can actually just talk about that profession, where, like when I was growing up, you actually had to go find a lawyer and get them to sit down with you and explain to you what, that was about.
Sure.
But now you don't have to do that. You can just find it on whatever on
Yeah,
podcast.
and I think that's ultimately good.
It's pretty neat. Pretty neat. Well, Sierra, thank you so much, and especially for hanging in there when we lost connection.
Oh yeah. No, I stayed faithful. I'm glad I did.
That's the podcaster in you. You knew that.
Yeah. No, my empathy was like, I know he's scrambling. I don't, no stress.
Yeah,
like,
me scrambling was basically unplugging and plugging back in. But yes, scrambling.
But yes, scrambling. I mean, that's the modern version.
So a couple quick things before we wrap up. Anything else you're working on that we can keep an eye out?
It's mainly just that I hope to continue with my podcast. It's been a little dormant, but stay positive for those who are looking to listen to something to kind of, hear how people get through the day. It's a little bit mental health, a little bit talking about entertainment careers. But yeah, it's stay and then PODSITIVE. I'm on Instagram.
Yes, that was I like the name. That was good job.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's a little corny, but we do our best. And then, I'm on Instagram at my name, which is at Sierra Katow, SIERRA KATOW. And I do a live comedy show in Los Angeles. If anybody is in the area, on the third Wednesday of each month, we do a little bar show in Koreatown at Lace's Bar called Heat Wave. And we get like a lineup of really great comedians doing like shorter sets, but it's always like a great crowd and a really fun time. And we're just
giving me something to do next time I'm in LA.
Oh yes, please stop by anytime. It's always a fun time. I think it's like, just good to kind of like be in a room together. We kicked it off like late last year when things were kind of finally okay to perform live. And and then I'm also performing all the time. So check my website, which is at sierrakatow.com, same spelling. And I put my show dates there. But yeah,
do you do your own website? I'm guessing you do.
Oh yes, I did. Yeah, I did initially code my own website, and I kind of set it up so it's like all connected to stuff, so I don't have to do much coding.
No, it's really well done. That's why I asked, because it looks like something that you would have somebody do, but I'm guessing with your background, you probably.
Oh sure.
Yeah, it's a nice website.
No, yeah, it's the one thing that my degree has helped me in my comedy career. Other than that, pretty expensive for not a lot of skill necessary. But yeah, I did make.
You never know though. Down the road, maybe you'll find yourself in a situation, or maybe you'll have to play a computer scientist on a show or something.
Yeah. Always down to play a computer scientist. I'll probably, maybe I'll write a show about him. There's Silicon Valley has been off the air long enough.
Yeah, it's time. Bring it back.
There'll be other things.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Sierra, and I hope that you will come back at some point. Love to hear more about what you've got going on.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a fun show. And I appreciate you. Yeah. Knowing what I'm up to and having a good, a good understanding of like all the fun things. So thank you.
You're so welcome. Okay. Hold on one second. All right. The talented Sierra Katow. So happy that she came on the show. Such a fan of hers. If you haven't heard her comedy or her stand-up, she's hilarious. You can look it up on YouTube, go see her in person, whatever you want to do, but she is definitely worth it. She's funny. But also a big fan of her acting. Sex Lives of College Girls, really, really good show. If you were a fan of Mindy Kaling's other shows, then you will probably like this one as well. She's such a good writer, and this show is just really, really funny. Sierra is our favorite part of it. So if you haven't checked that out, it's on HBO. Definitely look that one up. And then I didn't ask her about it, but she did a couple of voices for Raya and the Last Dragon that I think she's just a really talented person. So I hope you enjoyed that. It's our first show of the new year, and I think she started us off on a really good note. That was a lot of fun for me. So hope you enjoyed that. If you did enjoy it and you would like to support us, there's a couple of ways you can do that. If you're watching, it's YouTube Meisterkhan Pod. Just subscribe. It would really help us out if you would. if you're listening, wherever you're listening at, whatever podcasting app you're using, subscribe there. That'll also help us out. You can find, we recently passed our 500th episode. So excited about that. I think we're up to about 510 now. You can find all of those audio and video on our website, Meisterkhan.com. And there'll be a lot of other fun stuff on there to let you know if we have anything going on, if we're doing anything in studio, if we're going on location, if we're doing a convention, whatever we got going on will be on the website, Meisterkhan.com. So definitely check us out there. Thank you guys so much. Until next time. Bye, everybody.